Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. The date today, June 27th. This is the second semester of 2018, and this is lesson 2 of the semester. So if you are tuning in for the first time, this is actually just adjusting my lights. It's actually a really good time to start tuning in because I'm starting from the beginning. And last week was the introduction and lesson 1. And I'm going to do a little bit of recap of all that I spoke about on lesson 1 for level 1, and then move on to greater understanding. So what the topic for lesson 1, let me just drink water too. Last week was the chakras. What are they? What is this word? Why do I always paint things in rainbow? And I also feel like I glossed over a little bit too quickly the colors and the meaning of the colors and their significance. So I'm going to go over that again because it's worth re-emphasizing. And then we're going to go into, or I'm going to go into, so I hold up this little shape all the time. This is like this delicate little sculpture that I made 3 years ago that has actually survived pretty well. It's just got a few chunks taken out of it. But this is a good visual representation of the third dimensional form, like a physical volumetric form that I'm always drawing as a line drawing. So last week I began, with the understanding, with the presentation of the idea that this is 2 donuts or 2 toruses or tori, and they are at 90-degree angles. So we have one that is going around oriented at this angle, and I'll hold it closer for you, one that is going around at this angle, and also showing everyone that 4-lobed shape inside of there, that's negative space. That's actually an 8-lobed shape because we're looking at it in cross-section, and understanding that when I show you in my paintings that it's a shorthand. So like if I go to this picture that I have prepared here for right now, dun dun dun, with my magic pad, I go to share screen and I go to here and show you what's on my computer. Excellent. So now, hold on a second. Hope you can see this. This is from a different painting that I have. Oh, go back to this thing. I want an annotation, annotate. There we go. So you can see, and let me just get a good color that you can really see. All throughout this painting, we have echoed these 4 lobes. Like here, I'm making kind of like a lobe shape there and a lobe shape there. That's the red one. And then we've got this same one down here in orange. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can tell it's very hard for me to actually control this little stylus tablet, but you see the 4-lobed shape there. So that is the negative space that is in a chakra shape. Like if I were to complete the drawing of this orange chakra, there's a vortex up there, there's a vortex down there, right? So in this painting, like in each of my paintings, it's like a dissertation. I make everything very, specific. I'm doing this in order to share information, not just make something look pretty. And I'm also choosing which aspects of information to emphasize. So I have, different images that depict different things more or less truthfully or accurately. So here, what I've got is, what is accurate about this, we're actually showing half chakras or half tori, where we've got some of them are oriented like this. You can see this is what I would say a horizontal orientation. And those, I also say that they're like buttons on a shirt. If I made the front ones, because I'm not showing the front ones in this painting, like you have to make choices in a painting of what you can show, because if you just draw everything, it just becomes very overwhelming visually and difficult to see. So what I just drew was, those are extra circles that also represent what is there. I just don't have them in the actual painting. And that you can see that the way that they're aligned, my point is, up and down the same way that shirt buttons are aligned on a traditional shirt. And so those chakras of your body, or energy centers, are aligned horizontally. But then we have 2 other centers that are aligned vertically. This little guy over here, that is violet. And then if I erase what I just drew, we also have red. And in this particular painting, the red chakra is not depicted very accurately in terms of size. Like I had to do a little bit of artistic choices in order to get everything to fit together like puzzle pieces into the painting. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to squash this? How am I going to make this? So because ordinarily the red chakra goes all the way from the top of a person's head and beyond, like a couple of feet up above your head, to all the way down below your toes. And here you can see that chakra is kind of ending like at thigh level. So that is the part of this painting that is not completely accurate, and I admit to that. But what is accurate is the orientation of that red chakra. It is vertical. So what we end up having is, or are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of your chakras or energy centers are oriented horizontally, and then 2 of them, violet and red, are oriented vertically. And this creates a gyro-stabilizing effect. So gyrostabilization, this has to do with 2 things that are spinning at 90-degree angles. So here's a 90-degree angle. You know, this is like geometry from high school, but I'm not going to make you do boring math or anything like that. That's a perpendicular 90-degree angle. And if I were to draw a helicopter, this is like a sperm-shaped helicopter. I think it's so funny when I try to draw a helicopter. Like that's, you know, kind of like the cabin where the pilot goes. Here, in the back end of the helicopter, there's always a rotor that has blades that are going around like this, and it is oriented, you know, like the shirt, like the buttons on your shirt. And then there are the blades that go around the top of the helicopter that are oriented, how can I describe it? At a 90-degree angle to the first one. The point is, these are 2 objects that are spinning perpendicularly, and that creates a gyro-stabilizing effect. So in this case, in the case of a air transport vehicle, it stabilizes the flight of the vehicle through the atmosphere. And in the case of the chakras or energy centers of your body, which are, remember everyone from lesson 1, comprised of time, it stabilizes your flight through time. So as I erase this, I'm going to say that again. The orientation of your chakras, the gyro-stabilizing effect, stabilizes your flight through time. Let's say that this is a timeline sticking out from that particular convergence point in your non-physical anatomy. And what keeps you on this timeline? Like what, I'm making a big scribble there. Can't always control my pen. Like what keeps you from wobbling or veering off wildly into this direction? And the answer is the gyro-stabilizing effect of the different energy centers. So this one is especially important, and I will focus a lot of attention on that on later subsequent lessons of energetic anatomy. That is your violet chakra. And it is sometimes analogous to or equitable to, in human artwork, a halo, an angel's halo. Like that is how it is oriented around, like a hoop around the top of your head. And that's literally our connection to higher dimensional, less dense realms. It's our connection to infinity. I'm making a little infinity symbol up there. It's our connection to what we consider to be God, but not the bearded man sky god, not the biblical Jehovah, but an abstract, higher dimensional organizational principle that flows through all of us. That's where we connect. I like to say it's like the plug where we plug into the power plant. And that's like one bookend. So we've got one vertically oriented chakra or energy center over there. And then we've got the physical. And the physical is also vertically oriented, and it's like the other bookend. And those are also, let's use the piano. Those are also analogous to the first and last note of the human octave. So last week what I did was I began with C as analogous to red arbitrarily. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and then we go up to white light. So between red down here at C and violet up here at B, those are all the notes. Those are all the notes that we would define as human. When you're living within that slice of reality, you are in the human slice of reality. And if I go all the way up here, can you even hear this note? I don't know if you can even hear that note because it's in a different slice of reality than the human slice. Now let's do all the way down here. That note is also in a different slice of reality. So each one, there's visual harmonics and auditory harmonics. And now at this point in my understanding, like I've grown enough to be able to understand that both of them fit together. So that's what I mean, like the bookends. The red, this is the lower note, and lower in this case does not necessarily mean less good, because people talk about the low vibration. That's like, there's nothing wrong with something that has a lower vibration, and we've been living in a distorted time field, and that's why many people think, no, I don't want low vibration things. Low is like a note. There's nothing wrong with that note. It can sound very nice in the song. And then there's the highest vibration that is within the human octave. That would be the violet level. So wait, I should go back to my face. One of the other things I wanted to emphasize, re-emphasize, and go over from last week, and here, like I got my little piano down here. You can see what I'm doing with my keyboard. What I wanted to emphasize from last week is this idea of each one of these layers being a layer of self, an aspect of self that is moving at a different rate through time. That is very, very big. So let me go to a different picture. Screen share to, and this one, go to here. I hope you can see this one very easily. So this is a scratch board that I did. And this one is also highly accurate. And what's accurate about it, if I can gesture, if I can get a color, there we go. This red chakra that I'm scribbling over with my pen right at the moment is proportionally correct related to the human figure that is sitting inside of it. Your red chakra is really big. It extends several feet away from the actual epidermis that is the physical boundary of your physical body. And in this painting or scratching, etching, you can also see the different orientations of the chakras, two of which are vertical. That one's vertical, and purple one in the middle is vertical. And then all of the other ones are oriented at this horizontal level like this. And that creates the gyrostabilizing effect as we move through time. Okay, want to reiterate and re-emphasize. What are each of these layers? Because we start off with, I don't know if this color, yeah, white. Let's move a big white dot. We start off in life as a big white dot. That's you, that's me, that's everythingness, that's the 0th dimension. And we're going to talk about the singularity today too, because that's a big part of all of this energetic anatomy. The combination of all colors of light makes white in additive color mixing. So that's our origin, that's what we come from, that's who we are. And just like white light going through a prism, not a prison like a cage, but a prism with an M on the end, breaks up each of those breaks up that central wave, light, chunk of light, breaks up the central chunk of light into its constituent elements. This is the recipe of you. As I was walking around today, walking my little dog, I was thinking, how can I describe this to everyone? And I came up with this. I'm describing that this is the recipe of you, just like cake has a recipe. So this white dot over here, that's like the end result, that's cake. But what is cake made out of? Well, cake is made out of mostly this red stuff, and this red stuff is flour. And then half of that red stuff is orange. And or half of the amount of red stuff is the amount of orange we have. So if we have 2 cups of flour over here, we're going to have 1 cup of sugar over here. That's what orange is. That's the mammalian emotions. And then we're going to have 1/3 of the amount of yellow intellect. And we're going to have 1/4 the amount of green unconditional love, the tone that we make when we fly through time. It's an actual food. And then we're going to have 1/5 the amount of communication. And I don't know if you can see in this etching, things get a little bit hard to see, but there's a 6th one here, 1/6 the amount of insight. And then now, so that's like a tiny dash of salt. And then we get up to the violet chakra, this one over here, and that's like vanilla extract, just a tiny little dash of vanilla extract to make the cake of you. So what I'm saying is each one of these layers or notes is an aspect of self that is moving through time at a different rate. And the red aspect of self, hey, it's your lowest note on your personal octave, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's light that has been slowed down and coalesced to the point that it is no longer perceived as light, it's perceived as matter. It's the material world, and it's your body. It's what we're made out of here in this material world. But what I said last week, and what I reiterate over and over, is that we are not merely a physical body, the red, with some mammalian emotions, the orange, and then a very thin smear of cerebral cortex on top of that, which is human intellect. We're not just those 3 things. That's like saying a cake is not merely made out of flour and sugar and some eggs. A cake is made out of a lot more than that. In fact, if you didn't put in the salt and the baking soda and the vanilla extract, your cake would be like a pancake. It would be very flat. It would not be the total cake that we are going for over here. That is divine. That's divine cake. That white dot is you as a piece of divine cake. So, okay, wait, here's a question over here. Pedro says, red is the speed you move to interact with the world. So yeah, there's special things that are happening in this red layer over here. And I like to call it the stage upon which all of these other particles and ideas and forces have the opportunity to act and interact with each other, because they don't actually interact in any other realm. So what we've got is a connection to the source of divinity up here, and we've got a connection down here in the physical material realm, and we don't have a connection in all of these other we call them intangible levels. Like that, if you want to have an experience, you have to get a physical body and come into the physical world, and there you can experience light and heat and radioactivity and all the oxidation and all of these different things. You can't experience that if you just live here in the yellow zone. Oh, sorry, we got someone is lovely. Let me just stop share for a minute. Lovely people are on board. I just want to make sure that everyone is muted, because there we go. Let me just mute everyone, because it ends up being distracting, especially on the finished recording when you can hear other stuff in the background. Oh, wait, and here's another question. Let me drink. I will drink. I will answer. Hold on a second. Okay, Pedro also asks another good question. This is about the fine points of FRLing, or flying rainbow lasagna-ing, the verb. Pedro says, when you are FRLing, which singularity or chakra do we use? That's a very excellent question, because in my drawings that I'm showing you that we have convergence points all up and down our body. We have one that comes out. This is violet up here, violet. This one is indigo. This one is turquoise. This one is heart. And heart is like, the direct center of your chest. This one is human intellect. That's kind of like above your belly button. This one is yellow, orange, your guts. That's like, where your intestines are. And then red would be the base of your spine. I'm sitting on it right now. I won't show it on camera. But yes, the root chakra, which is like, where our life force energy comes from. You're very nice. Thank you very much, Patricia. Just complimented my hairdo. Hold on a second. I show in different paintings. Sometimes even on my dress, you can see, sometimes I show our chakras are like nested Ukrainian dolls or Russian dolls. Those there's like a big one and a smaller one inside of it, and a smaller one inside of that, a smaller one inside of that. So we can either have it depicted visually as, here's that whole set of dolls that make up the recipe of you with all of the layers intact, or I can unnest all of the chakras and take them out and show them to you. In fact, let me just, if I squint and indulge me while I squint and scroll, while I go to my class lectures and look for, I can't believe I even found this painting that fast. And now I'm going to go to screen share. Hold on a second. Share the screen. Sometimes I'm so impressed. I'm like, that actually worked, and I found it. So here, this is an image of all of the Russian dolls unnested. The biggest one at the bottom, that's the red chakra, all the way up to the smallest one, the highest vibration aspect of self, all the way up at the top. So this is the recipe of you, but you've been dissected or deconstructed into the various layers of self. And what I'm trying to get across is this idea that, if I can annotate here, get to the pen and a color. Where I'm scribbling down here, the red chakra, that's like the midpoint of a journey. I think you can see there is an actual white dot at the top of this painting that begins at that white dot. That's the white dot, the cake of God, the cake of you. That's who you are before you become these aspects that have been diffracted, just in the same way that white light is changed when it goes through a crystal or a prism and is split up into its various elements. So consciousness emanated from that white light, and it became violet, and it became indigo, and it became turquoise, and it became green, and it became wider and wider, larger and larger wavelengths, lower and lower frequencies. Here, I have to move my pen. Orange, and then it became red. And when it became red, when it moved all the way down to there, it coalesced into what we would describe as matter. Matter is light that has the privilege of going slower than the speed of light. So I'm not a scientist, However, I've learned a lot of the science and math language in order to have a common vocabulary to be able to describe some of these concepts that I'm drawing and painting. And so the idea is that we are emanating through time. All of these things, it's a hard concept. Visualizing time. This is a time body. So another big take. So I wanted to go back over the significance of what all the different colors are, but I also want to reaffirm and to say, when I'm showing this to you, I don't want to make it appear as if this is the only thing in existence. This is a simplification also, even though it's a accurate three-dimensional model. This should have 7 layers. This outer layer should be red, and then each subsequent layer going in should go higher frequency, and also going towards the blue end of the spectrum, blue-violet end of the spectrum. And then this is that central convergence point where the dot, the white light of God or source or totality, unity consciousness exists at that point. And the point is, when I said red, it is half of our journey. We circulate outward from that central convergence point into the material world, and then we circulate back to that convergence point. So we're halfway on our journey. Hey, we each have physical bodies. Congratulations. Congratulations to my audience. We all have physical bodies. Seriously, love and appreciate your physical bodies. I will reiterate this over and over also, because I think all of humanity at this point, we have genetic degradation that programs in a lot of self-hatred, and then intrusive thoughts. There are a lot of demonic turds who refuse to flush the peanut gallery that give us comments all the time that might be about your size, your shape, your general constitution. Like, are you too fat? Are you too skinny? Too fat in one part, too skinny in another part, not looking right here, not looking right here. Like, these are hapless criticisms by literal turds. It's like, you actually have, first of all, I'll just get here's how you get out of those, negative thoughts. When some peanut gallery turd talks to you and says, like, you're not good enough for blah, blah reason, like your arms aren't long enough, or your whatever body part is not big enough, or is not shaped right, or whatever. It's like, you actually have a body. That's the big one. Like, it's like someone who doesn't even have a house is criticizing your house. Like, I don't like the color of your ceiling. It's like, you know something? I actually have a house. You don't even have a house. So who are you to criticize the color of my ceiling? And then the other thing is, I always say to everyone, like, we are blessed to have these beautiful multicellular organic bodies. And when I say beautiful, I'm not talking about the standards of like what's on the cover of People magazine or something like that. I'm not talking about that standard of beauty. I'm talking about the standard of beauty of understanding the miracle of metabolism, that we have life force energy, that we have the capacity to heal our bodies or to improve our bodies, through athletic achievements. Like, your body responds to what you think and what you do and what you eat and how you are. The capacity to grow new skin cells if you harm your body, the capacity to procreate. All of these things are miracles. And even eating and digesting food successfully, that's a miracle. And your body is literally a microcosm of the larger world, this larger time field within which we exist, the larger galaxy. And all of that is miraculous. And add to that something that I've begun describing as provenance of photons, which is the idea that, you're made up of literally light. This is solidified light. And it came from the sun. I'm pointing out my window over there. It's what the sunlight is up there. It's very hot and sunny days. So I have all the window shades closed. The sun and the stars as emanators of light. That's where we're getting our consciousness and, light for photosynthesis, so we can eat a salad, and warmth, we can live on a warm planet, and also like being able to have calcium in your bones. This came from the death explosion of a star in very, very ancient times. You're made of light. You're made of light. If you have one takeaway from this level 1 lesson, that this is, you are literally made of light. And what is light? Light is a carrier of information. Just like, we have created as humans these fiber optic cables that carry information in the form of light. That's what light is. It carries information. So all of the photons that have been flying through, space, coming from the sun and the stars, that have coalesced into your body. Let's say you have 5 billion photons. I'm sure that there's more. I'm choosing this as an arbitrary number. 5 billion photons make up the you-ness of you in this moment. And those photons are all on a journey. Like they came from someplace, they're having an experience, and they're going to someplace. You're part of that journey of intelligence, that journey of organizational principle, that journey of light as it is moving from place to place. That's provenance. Like if you have a special antique, it's like, oh, this is my antique, grandfather clock or whatever, special artwork or whatever, also has provenance. It means, where did it come from? How did you get it? Well, originally grandfather bought it in France, and then he traveled over here on the Mayflower and then passed it down to this guy, to this guy, to this guy. And that's how you know it's authentic. That's why I say we have beautiful organic multicellular bodies. We have authentic heirlooms. Your body was not made in a lab. I'm not talking, my audience does not contain any clones or anybody who's synthetic. I don't have any synthetic replicants in my class. No, I'm speaking to all beautiful, natural humans. So despite the fact you might have cellulite on your ass, or some body part is not big enough or is too big, you have provenance. You are an actual heirloom of photons that have come from the stellar network and circulated down into this portion of their journey in the material world. And I need to drink water. But this is not the end of the journey of the photons. Where do photons go once they've come into the material world? They go back into a state of light. And so what we are doing from this direction, so we've circulated from the source outward, outward, outward. And that's like kind of going down the scale. Like we started high, and then we went lower, and we went lower, and lower, and lower, and lower. And then we became physical matter. And so all of this, when I'm saying this, I'm understanding that I'm speaking through the cultural and biological filter of the fall of consciousness, the fall from grace, that we used to live at a very exalted level. Seriously, for real, we didn't have to eat physical food. I didn't have to, whatever, go grind up plants from my garden and drink them in my juice like this in order to stay alive. What I did was direct connection. Didn't need an intermediary in order to be able to get plants to get all of that light. We had direct connection from the sun, and that this fall from grace was relatively traumatic. And this is the story that I usually share in, level 18. Lesson 18 at the end of level 1. So kind of like at the end of the semester. Just gathering my thoughts for a minute. Yes. We are supposed to be comfortable, even if we are in a lower vibration, because we're supposed to be still activated in our higher faculties and connected to the stellar network. Like that was the original intended format of our bodies. That the miracle was and remains being embodied at this level of density and still being connected to the divine through this aperture or connection, like a wire, but it's a wireless connection. It's Bluetooth. You get Bluetooth connection to God. You don't need an Ethernet cable to be connected and not to be disconnected. And what happened was the planetary trauma that, about 10 or 20,000 years ago, genetic invaders came and they went snip, snip, snip. We're cutting off your connection so that you can't be connected to the divine and recognize your own innate godhood while you're in the body. And that really changes and redefines what it is to be in the physical body and to have a physical presence. But that was not the original intention. And the original intention was for us to have this endless journey emanating from the sun and the stars, coalescing as matter, and then returning to the sun and the stars. So we're halfway through our journey. We've come from the light network. That light has been slowed down and coalesced into matter. And now what we need to do is raise the frequency of what we are and become non-physical matter again. And that's what in level 2, I'm going to speak all about ascension and how the concept of ascension and the path of least likelihood are tied together. So let me save that for level 2 and the stretchy, infinitely stretchy fabric of the cosmos and how all of this is created. But the whole point is, everyone has been like, it's a prison, like being in a physical body is a prison. I'm making this exasperation face, like, I'm so exasperated, I don't like to be here. It's like, no, everyone, it's not supposed to be that way. Life is supposed to be a fun adventure, but it's become an arduous, grim death march, and that's not what it was intended to be. So yes, that's why whenever I say lower vibration, lower does not mean worse. Lower does mean denser. And denser also, like as we're going down the scale, as we're going into density, it does mean more distorted. So the information that comes from directly, the source of intelligence that comes directly to our violet chakra. It's not in word form. And when we perceive it, through insight, again, this insight, it is inner vision. It is not in the form of words or the English language. As those concepts filter through our body, they become more and more distorted. Just like if you take an audio tape, right, with nice music, and you begin to slow it down, it becomes distorted. It sounds lower and blah, blah. That is, in a lot of ways, very truthful. And that is why a lot of people have also said, oh, just by definition, being in the physical realm equals some level of distortion. And it's true, but we're not supposed to be experiencing these profound levels of suffering that we have been experiencing since the genetic degradation. And P.S., stick with the class, because I do definitely get to how to fly rainbow lasagna, how to get over, how to supersede these aspects of constraint, like the lack of function that our DNA has had for pretty much what is known as all of recorded human history. So again, I'm not just here to explain in excruciating detail what went wrong and how everything is wrong and uncomfortable without offering actual solutions. And it takes time to intellectually understand the concepts of those solutions, like how they come from, how they are possible, and apply them to your own life. And even looking at the shape is transformative. That's why someone's like, why is she always holding up that shape? I'm always holding up this shape, because even just looking at it is transformative. Even if I never spoke about it and didn't flap my moving mouth parts and make a bunch of noise and vibrate the atmosphere, it would still be transformative for people to look at this. And I have animations and other, the more detailed and the more complex I can do to understand that this is speaking on a level beyond words. And then also I try to say as much as I possibly can in articulation with words, because this is, lasagna is like a food. This is food for the intellect. When we ingest new ideas, it literally changes the dance of our DNA. And this has been shown by research scientists like Bruce Lipton. I always point people in his direction because he does a lot of good work with epigenetics. And I think I've written that word before, but I can write it again. Epigenetics, meaning the code that rules the code. Let me write it. Hold on, and not spill my drink. Go to text. So epigenetics, this means the code within the code, or the code that rules the code. So identical twins do not develop identical diseases. This is because of epigenetics. So what makes one identical twin get cancer and the other one goes through life perfectly healthy? And the answer is thought structure, emotional structure, belief system, and the behavior of DNA. So sometimes you'll see me make these motions with my hands. Your DNA is not a static object, it's very dynamic. And even without consciously saying, I'm going to lasagna my DNA today, your DNA is always dancing. It's literally dancing, it's vibrating. Just like vibrating strings of piano or vibrating guitar strings, it emanates music, and your music affects your environment, and your environment affects you. So the movement of your DNA has been limited and constrained, and has led to, has not only led to death, but then we program, and I'll get to your question, Pedro, we program our little babies when they come here to expect death. That little babies come here, they're perfect. That first year of life, infants still have a very strong connection to the divine, or the numinous, or the non-individuated sense of self that is higher consciousness. And then as we begin to teach them, this is your name is Johnny, or your name is Susie, and they start to learn individuation, like, oh, if I touch myself, I feel myself, but if I touch my crib, I don't feel my crib. And other forms of individualization, they start to individualize, and they start to be cut off from the higher source of unity consciousness. And also we begin to teach them about death, where at first their DNA is doing a dance. It's the dance of eternal life. That's like, I'm going to stay alive and I'm never going to die. And I don't even know what death is. And then what happens is maybe your pet goldfish dies, your grandma dies, and some grown up that understands death and is doing the death dance with their own DNA seeds that idea, plants that like a seed in a garden into the little infant's mind. Says, goldfish, bye-bye. Grandma, bye-bye. They died. They went bye-bye. And it is looked at like a necessary form of children's education and part of their development. And they learn about death and blah, blah, blah. And what has literally happened is you change the dance of DNA from eternal life DNA to now you're going to die at a certain age DNA. And it's a software program for the mind, even though I'm not a transhumanist. All of this in order to say, as each one of us begins to learn to do the flying rainbow lasagna dance with your DNA, you get to edit or amend or rewrite all of those things that were written into your DNA behavior, all the way that your DNA was taught to behave. It's not just something is written in your DNA as genetic fatalism. This was when the DNA was first discovered in the 1940s or so, that humans looked at it and they said, if it's in your DNA, it's going to happen. You are fated to have that disease or have that experience or have that whatever, without recognizing there's such a thing as genetic behavior. And that's what epigenetics are. Basically, how tightly or loosely coiled are the springs of your DNA, making certain information accessible and certain information not accessible. If the pages of your book are glued together, you cannot read that chapter. So that means that there could be a chapter all about how to get cancer, but you're not reading that chapter, so you're not getting cancer. So all of that in order to say, just looking at the flying rainbow lasagna gives you a new idea. It changes your DNA. I do a lot with interdimensional ethics, and Gala actually asked me a good question as she's going through the recorded lessons on Teachable about interdimensional ethics, because a big part of this, when you are embodying love, that tone, I'm embodying love. What part of it is allowing, like you allow other beings to behave as they wish to behave, and you are allowed to behave as you wish to behave, but you're not allowed to behave all over on top of someone else and limit what they're doing. So it's interpreting these cosmic laws can be like like walking a tightrope, like doing a fine interpretation. Let me drink. How much are you allowed to do? What are you allowed to do? So like as an example, and I'm just pouring more water for myself. So I'm a galactic visitor, right? And it's kind of like, Aurora, like, how are you even allowed to be here? Are you breaking the rules? Are you breaking the law? Breaking the law, breaking the law. I assure you, everyone, I am not breaking any cosmic laws by being here. And this also goes to, because it's level 1, but I'm just introducing this concept. This shape does not break. This shape is how I am here. I invented this genetic dance for this body, so that I, as a cosmic being, could come into this body and share these ideas with humans and change history, change the timelines, change the direction that this planet and the inhabitants of this planet were flying on, because I really saw what was going on here and I said, that is not cool. That is not okay. And in really higher dimensional realms in terms of ethics and inserting yourself and being an interventionist, you put yourself on the line. You don't just be like, oh, that's not okay down there. I'll just wave my magic wand and poof, now like I'll fix things and everything will be okay. And I'll just sit on this cloud up here and eat strawberries and everything will be great. That's not how you do it. If you want to change things, you actually have to get a body. That's what I'm talking about when those nasty occupiers of the interstices criticize you or anyone else that has a beautiful, organic, living body. They don't even have a body. They're not even a good enough musician to have a guitar. Like, you might not be playing the most perfect song with your body, but at least you have a body, you have a guitar. So yeah, I had to get a body. It's when Pedro was saying about the physical layer, and I was saying the red layer is the stage upon which, all of these particles and forces interact. Look at this shape. Over here, the red layer, that's all these red layers connect. You can see that's like what holds the sculpture together. Then look, does orange connect? No, orange does not connect. Yellow does not connect. Green does not connect. The only other place where it connects is up here at violet, which is that our origin and our destination, the divine unity consciousness that we come from. So we're able to interact and connect in unity consciousness, and we're able to interact and connect out here in the physical, but not just in any of these other realms. So it's like saying, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to actually like write to someone or, pick up the phone or actually talk to them, actually communicate, you got to get a body, you got to get a mouth, you got to get a hand, you have to get a pen, you have to get paper. Like, you have to get all these physical things to have an interaction. Or you can do all these interactions, at the singularity, at unity consciousness. And I'll go to you, Pedro's question. This is the other thing, though, about the singularity. So in this shape, And also, I was saying this shape is like nested Ukrainian or Russian dolls. Also, this shape does not exist in a vacuum. There's other shapes next to it. I just am holding up one, it's like I'm holding up one puzzle piece, but that's not the entire puzzle. This fits together in an entire complex time vortex. Sorry, I should call it like a map of time. Time vortices fit together in a map of time. And you can see some of them over my shoulder and some of these paintings over here. They're very complex maps where all of these things fit together. So I don't want to misrepresent and have everyone think like, oh, there's only one of these in existence. No, there's 10 million billion of these in existence. And the question was about which convergence point do we use when we're doing the flying rainbow lasagna? And the answer is like, you should use the one that feels comfortable and right to you. I use the one that is centered in like the center of my skull, but some people use the one that's in the center of their chest. But the point is they're all the same singularity. So singularity, right now we're defining terms. This is the singularity. And in level 2, I'll talk more about the stretchy fabric of time, space, and consciousness. This is the place where the fabric of time, space, and consciousness has been stretched to an infinite point. An infinite amount of stretchiness has made it stretch an infinite time. And it doesn't just stretch once, it stretches from all these different directions, all converging in that one place. And that one place there is the 0th dimension. And I'm checking my time over here, just making sure I have enough time. In fact, maybe I should go through the dimensions because I'll do this on many presentations too. But it's the 0th dimension, not because it is worth nothing. This is just like when I say something is a low vibration. That's a low vibration, but it's a pretty note. It can sound very nice in a song. Something that costs 0, this because it's a capitalistic system. When I would tell people about the 0th dimension, be like, oh, it's worthless. It's like, it's free, it's 0. It's like, no, just because something is free does not mean it's worthless. And also the number 0, it doesn't mean like worthless. In this case, the 0th dimension is everything. It is totality. It is everythingness, because these are flowing shapes. So this is a static sculpture, but it's a dynamic flow of energy that it represents. And there are these flowing circles or figure 8s, and they always pass through this area here. It's the Tor of the torus, or the donut hole, right? All of these lines pass through that central convergence point at some point in their journey. And now, I'm making a pathway like this, but it goes this way, and it goes this way, and it goes this way. It goes in every single different orientation. So it goes, horizontally and forwards and backwards and up and down. And then there's also one that's coming from the top. That this, all of these timelines through which photons and aspects of intelligence flow, they all overlap at that central convergence point. So if I were to use the whiteboard and draw this out, and we'll go through the dimensions too, whiteboard. This is the 0th dimension over here. It's a big fat dot. It's the dot where everybody lives. Everything, every possibility, and every probability. I make this infinity symbol. It is infinity. So science describes the Big Bang as, the spontaneous outward expansion of this totally compressed dot. And I'm not a scientist and I don't necessarily espouse the Big Bang, but I just want to use cultural shorthand to help everyone to think of what the 0th dimension can be. It's the overlapping place of infinity, and it's called the singularity. So first of all, it's the 0th dimension, and it's called the singularity because it is single. By its nature, it is single. There's only one of it. But wait a minute, I'm on the whiteboard. I got to go to a different picture. When I showed you in all these other pictures, here, stop share, and then go to the other pictures. Go to my desktop. Here, look, in all these pictures, and get an annotation. In all of these pictures, look, there's a convergence point there. I don't know if you can see that green, change the color. There's a convergence point there. There's one there. There's one, there my pen doesn't work. There's one there. There's one down there. My goodness, there's 7 of them depicted in this one painting. And there I have paintings that depict hundreds of them. These are all the same singularity, because if we make all of these Russian dolls sit within one another, what ends up happening is all of those singularities overlap where I'm making this big giant black scribble dot. There's only one singularity. So it's also a lot like saying each one of these different convergence points is a doorway. So now I'm right. Let me go to the whiteboard. I'm not driving you crazy. I'm not trying. I might be driving you crazy. I'm not trying to drive you crazy. Jumping back and forth. Whiteboard. I'm just trying to get a lot of information across visually. Let's say that each one of these rectangle shapes is a doorway, right? And there are a million doorways. Like I just drew, you know, a couple of doorways. But, you know, like in that painting, I drew 7 chakras, main energy centers, but you have many, many energy centers that are like sub chakras throughout your body. At the center of every cell, you have here, well, if this is the cell membrane and this is the nucleus of a cell, you've got a doorway to infinity at the center of your cells. That's called your DNA. And at the center of every atom, you've got a doorway to infinity. So you have many, 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 almost uncountable number of doorways to infinity in your own body. So if each one of these is a doorway to infinity, I'm showing like it opens up. When it opens up to the singularity. Different doors, but they all have the same pathway leading to, I can't control this pen, oops, leading to, that didn't work, the singularity. The singularity is like one big giant room or one very, very tiny room that has 10 million different doors and windows and every single form of aperture to get into that room. And this can be like a different person, this can be a different atom, there are different perspectives that all lead to the same house. So, or all different roads that all lead to the same home. So if this is like your house, this is your house of infinity. I just drew a little roof so it looks like a house. The 0th dimension or the singularity is the house of infinity. And literally everybody and everything lives there. Everything overlaps there. It is unity consciousness. It's such a profound concept. I'm going to return to it over and over. It's almost too much for little individuated consciousnesses like yours and mine to wrap our brains around. Like what? Everything this is there. Everything this is there. Everything is there. And I'll use another analogy with my magical rainbow scarf. And I will get to your question, I promise you. My magical interdimensional scarf. Hold on a second. That, let's say this is like the stretchy fabric of time, space, and consciousness is a stylish silk scarf. And we can stretch it with, let's say this is God's finger, and I'm now stretching the fabric of time, space, and consciousness with my finger. And it makes like a pointy vortex, right? So let's say that's one pointy vortex. But that's just one pointy vortex. And I'm going to do this again. Here, look, I'm going to stretch the fabric of time, space, and consciousness again with another pointy vortex. Oh, there's another one. And I'm going to do it again with another pointy vortex like that. So now I have at least 3, right? And they all of their vortices fit together at the same place. Look, they're coming from different places of the scarf, from different areas of time, space, and consciousness, but they all converge at that one point. This is a point, like this concept is worth me emphasizing so much because that concept of the singularity is at the center of, or at the foundation of what this flying rainbow lasagna is. Now I'm circling back to when I made that statement. I said, I did not break the cosmic rules by coming here into this body. I didn't. What I did was I bent those rules. I made the singularity, the central convergence point of this sculpture, jump up and down very fast. The singularity is here, and the singularity is here in the flying rainbow lasagna shape. So just like the yellow sculpture, this is a static representation of a dynamic shape. This is also the static representation of a dynamic shape, and I have animations to show everyone, but the main point is it is the end result of an oscillation of that singularity jumping up and down, and when, you know, or jumping back and forth, or jumping in and out, or jumping end over end like this. When it is jumping back and forth like this, it looks like it's in 2 different places. Let's say it's jumping through time. It's not 2 separate things. Just like if we were to take a long exposure image of me moving my arm across the screen like this, like hitting a baseball or something like that, you'd be like, wow, Aurora has 10,000 arms in that picture. But you intellectually understand, in that picture, I actually have 2 arms. You took a picture of my arm moving 10,000 units across the screen. That is what this is too. What we have is the singularity jumping up and down very fast. And it looks like it's in 2 places at the same time, but it's actually the same singularity. This is what I mean by not breaking the rules of the cosmos. Because the rules of the cosmos, they're just like the rules of physics. I'm just drinking more water here. And I'll get to that question. The rules of physics. You know, it's not something that it's like, oh, like we're just gonna break gravity for today. Like, no, actually everything relies upon that. Like, you got to keep everything consistent. And that's exactly the same with these ethical rules of how you're allowed to interact as consciousness and the structure of the cosmos. Like, you have to uphold these rules, otherwise everything, you know, falls into like a pile of goo and nothing works. So yeah, I wasn't allowed to. It's also a lot like a math proof. So this is actually a higher dimensional, you could call it a math formula or a math proof. So in regular math, we're used to 1 + 1 = 2 with Arabic numerals. But when you get into higher levels of math, it becomes more of a verbal and logical experience or expression that might not involve Arabic numerals at all. It might involve statements that are logical statements. Statement 1, statement 2, statement 3, and then you have to solve the proof, which means come up with statement 4. And statement 4 cannot come into conflict with any of the previous established statements. So the previous established statements might be something like, the floor has a carpet on it. That's number 1. Number 2 is the ceiling has paint on it. Number 3 is the chair has upholstery on it. And then you have to come up with number 4. And it's like, you cannot come up with anything that calls into question any of the other previously established facts. So it can't be like the chair upholstery is made out of pudding. No, the chair is upholstered with fabric. We have already established that it's not upholstered with pudding. So you have to be smart and figure out what's number 4 that doesn't conflict with any of the other stuff. That is the challenge that I faced when I made the Flying Rainbow lasagna. I had to say, well, this is true, and this is true, and this is true. So what's the 4th thing that I could come up with that I can say where all these other things are still true, but that we solved everything that needs to be solved? That is what I did with Flying Rainbow lasagna. And the way that I did that was I didn't change anything about the singularity. I didn't say, oh, now we have 2 singularities. Because if you have 2 singularities, you have a duality. You have a multiplicity. And this shape is all about transcending duality. Duality, this is like at the basis of everything. Good versus evil, light versus dark, self versus context. Like ego, self versus the world. This is how we transcend all of those dualities and the limitations in it. P.S. I'm not a demonic apologist. So if I say transcend the limitations of dark and light, I'm not talking about some kind of moral relativism where it's like, oh, murder is okay, rape is okay. Like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Don't take my words out of context here. What I am speaking about is this understanding of different consciousness moving in different directions, and how that is, they're all moving towards unity consciousness, but they're having a different pathway. And this goes back to like photons and provenance. So I'll get into more of the fine points of the Flying Rainbow lasagna as a tool for non-duality, but for now, we'll leave it in the sense of this is the visualization or the topological solution to the question that, little kids always ask when they start to get to be, certain ages and they're thinking clearly. They're like, Mommy, Daddy, if God exists and God is real, then why are good and evil subsets of God? Like, why isn't God just entirely good? And again, I'm not an apologist for demons. I'm not here to justify the existence of evil. Far from it. I'm offering many, many tools, bucket and a mop, with which we can clean up our galaxy and our cosmos of all of the infestation. But this is to understand my solution, my answer to the little tiny kid, how can good and evil exist and both be subsets of God, is that God is constantly jumping back and forth between these 2 positions. And that in this jumping back and forth, there are different qualities that are achieved. Just like if we have the viewpoint of one eye and the viewpoint of another eye, they're like slightly different perspectives that have different qualities. So we have the quality of energy or becomingness, like awareness, moving towards organization. And we have the position of entropy, which is non-being, going into nothingness, stopping being alive, stopping being aware, losing energy. And that both of these are journeys towards unity consciousness, but they're very, very different journeys. One is the journey of like getting money, like, ooh, I'm getting rich, I'm getting paid, I'm getting lots and lots of money, I'm going towards energy, towards the divine, towards, the source. And then the other direction is losing money. Like losing all your money, losing all your energy, losing all the gas in your car. But when everybody does that when a being, not everybody, but when an experiencer does that, get into a super dense state that is called the Bose-Einstein condensate, which I will talk more about in subsequent lessons, but that is also a way of achieving unity consciousness. So I didn't do anything that was against the rules of the cosmos by coming into this body. What I did have to do was be really super smart and come up with a solution that wouldn't contradict any of the other established rules of like the rules of the non-physical world, so that I could actually come in here. And then once I did that, here's the rules in the world. Once somebody makes a song or invents an idea or does anything, it's there for the world. If you write a song called Stairway to Heaven, you're not the only person that ever gets to sing that song. That song now exists as like its own thought structure in the cosmos. Anybody can sing that song. So I was saying in the Facebook intro, what I like to do, I like to say this is open source code for your DNA. I'm not a transhumanist, but it's like saying, I offer this software patch code for your DNA, like as a concept that anyone can use. I could have just bypassed the earthly experience. I didn't actually have to come into a body and come here and like pay my electric bill. P.S. Thank you for all of your contributions. You helped me to pay my electric bill. I didn't have to have this experience of like driving to the supermarket, buying toilet paper. Like it loses its novelty after a little while. My intention for coming into this body was and remains to share this concept as widely as possible. Because if I didn't come here with flappy moving mouth parts and make sculptures or do videos or something like that, people would still learn about it eventually, but it would be like, it's like discovering fire or, discovering some other natural phenomenon, a very, like a slow cumulative process. And I was like, no, like we need to like learn about this. I need to tell everybody about this because it's literally, it's like the key that allows us to rearrange reality into new formats that weren't possible before. That's what I say when I say adding an additional degree of freedom. This shape transforms into this shape by the addition of a new dimension and the addition of another degree of freedom. And that's exactly like what happens when you take a flat piece of paper and you fold it into the third dimension and you turn it into origami. And in this sculptural form, that other dimension that, we would say the extra dimension that's added to it is where I'm putting my pen. This empty space in here between the two vibrating points of, the singularity, that spot in there is the extra dimension. And when you add an additional dimension, you add an additional degree of freedom. It means you can do more stuff. So everyone here that's belly aching about like, oh, it's so low vibration. Oh, I'm stuck in the physical. Oh, I can't do what I want to do with my DNA. Guess what? Now everyone can do it. You can do what you want to do with your DNA. You can do what you want to do with your DNA. That's the whole point. That's the good news. That's the message. And it's worthy. It's a worthy motivator for me to be here. And so, yes, I'm very happy to run this class and do all that lasagna sharing that I do, because that's the whole point. And it makes each individual, that gives the capacity to clean up your own genetic code. And as you begin to play more music, your music spreads to other people and other organisms, and it even spreads off this planet, and the entire time field is healed. So make lasagna, make your own lasagna, share it with others. This is how we transform the world. I need to get to the question. So, okay, Pedro was asking this a little while back. He said, so a black hole accelerates matter back to the speed of light. Let's say this. Let's say a black hole is an aperture in this world. So we're okay. Metabolism of a star. What is a star? A star is an actual living, metabolizing being, just like you and I have a body and we live and we, I got to drink a certain amount of water every day. Water comes in, water circulates through my body, water goes out as pee-pee. And that is metabolism. That's what we're supposed to be experiencing. Stars also have a metabolism, and it is a metabolism of energy and time and light and consciousness. It's, photons and the provenance of photons are part of that. So stars, when they're babies, they coalesce out of a nebula. A nebula, this is a planetary nebula that is filled with tons of gas and the potential for like dust and the potential for stuff. All right. And in order for a star to be born, there has to be enough stuff to coalesce. It coalesces and it's like, oh, look, now I'm doing stuff. I'm a star. Right? And it's able to do stuff, and emanate light and emanate consciousness and timelines. The photons that are flying off of the stars that we see, they're timelines and possibilities and probabilities, sending light out. And then at a certain point, every star like it doesn't have enough stuff to metabolize anymore. It's like, oh, I'm trying to do stuff, but I can't do stuff. So what happens is it collapses in on itself. The outward pushing force of light and consciousnness moving outward into the world reverses, and it collapses in on itself. And for some of them, it collapses so suddenly and so violently that it makes kind of like a kapow supernova. And that's where we get the calcium for our bones and stuff like that. And some of them, it just kind of collapses like in a wanky way. But when it ends up collapsing, all of that stuff, all of that matter, pushes in on itself. It's the super stretchy fabric of the fabric of time, space, and consciousness. And it creates a, super stretched area that goes somewhere else. I think this is why I don't call myself a scientist. Like, I think science in a lot of ways on Earth right now is kind of funny, because they're like, oh yes, a black hole gets sucked into a black hole. It's not like it goes nowheresville, it goes somewheresville. That black hole, I should draw it, goes to somewhere else. Let's draw it. Draw a picture. Picture is worth 1,000 of my flapping moving mouth parts. Here. Black hole. Oh, that's actually kind of relevant. Yeah, let me just choose a different color. Okay. So let's say this is a star. The star was sending out lots of light and lots of photons in this direction. At a certain point, everything reversed and went in this direction instead. And this is, these should all be like arrows that converge all together and makes a black hole. And that black hole, like, I'll erase a little bit, is like a vortex. So this is, I'll draw like a twisty, swirly vortex. It's a swirly vortex. And stuff goes into the vortex. And it doesn't just go nowheresville. That vortex is actually a super stretchy stretchingness of the fabric of time, space, and consciousness that then comes out somewhere else. Like, let's say now here's like a doorway. And oh, look, we're going to open up that doorway and all this stuff is going to come out into a new spot. It's a tube or a portal or a transportation thing. That's the best way I can describe it. And it takes light and information and awareness and consciousness from this level of reality and brings it through a doorway to a different level of reality. Okay. Oh, okay, wait. Now let me get to this other, I'm squinting and reading here. Pedro says that is why he permits the existence of putis. And this is Pedro's very funny, what's it called? Anagram for the turds who refuse to flush, those pesky occupiers of the interstices. And because this is the level 1 stuff, if you're new, the interstices, that is this membrane right here. I'm putting my silver pen. The membrane between worlds, it is the membrane of death. Those are the turds who refuse to flush. So the basics of this story is that we are good guitar players. You can tell because we're breathing. Hey, audience, participants, are we breathing? Yes, we are breathing. We're eating, we're drinking, we're pooping. We're doing everything that it takes to stay alive. That's called playing your guitar. I'm playing my guitar. My guitar is called being alive. If you don't play your guitar right, you don't get to have a guitar anymore. It's called hitting the membrane of death. So this is what we did last week with my basic explanation of the time vortex that I'm always drawing, that what we want to do, and I'm going to do this a lot in level 2, is go up the center timeline. I'm going to talk about the significance of that in level 2. But what has happened is our chakras have been drawn askew so that we are now hitting the membrane of death. And what we have to do in order to finally align with that central core timeline is play all of the wrong notes. Let me do this example on my piano. Wrong notes. If we want to actually play this note, and instead we have to give a good, is this the right note? No, 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 no. Trial and error, die again, die, 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 die. Still not there, die again, die again, die again, die again, die again. Oh my God, you finally found the doorway out of here, which is the correct set or iteration of a combination of thoughts and ideas and beliefs and actions and behaviors and basically all the things that you can do and say and experience. Finally found the right combination in the choose your own adventure novel of your life to hit the right note and actually get out of this level, this layer of reality. And those beings that are the pesky turds, they're like, we're not going to play good music. We're playing this music on purpose. purpose. They intentionally smashed their guitars on stage. And they did this on many other planets, and they did this on this planet too. And that basically they ended up living in this in-between world that is not supposed to be a place that actually, so I'm looking at my clock, actually supports life. You're supposed to live in the actual time field down here, the time vortex where my finger is. You're not actually supposed to live here on the membrane of death. That's supposed to be a place of cold, non-movement, entropy. When I say cold, I mean literally like 0 degrees Kelvin. No heat, no friction, no movement, no molecular movement. You're not supposed to be doing anything on the membrane of death. They're like, wait a minute. We're going to subvert the rules of the cosmos. We're going to live on the membrane of death, but we're going to get energy from the living. And then we're going to apply it to our own consciousnesses. And that's how we're going. They're kind of like treading water in time. They're like, we're dog paddling for like 10,000 freaking years while they're sucking the energy off of you, me, and other living beings in a horrible, horrible way. And this is called satanic technology. Oh, well, this is technically lesson 18. And I'm going to wrap up level 1 and go on to level 2. But let me just rearrange my chair here. In lesson 18, what I speak all about is the motivations for why these organisms or entities, why did they act in that way, the consequences, how, what happened on our planet and in our bodies, and the solutions. Because I'm never going to tell you about everything that's wrong without telling you, how do we fix it? What's the bucket in the mop? The bucket in the mop is flying rainbow lasagna. And many other techniques that I have also for like how to deal with those pesky turds. So I started to share those techniques with you today. When those pesky turds talk to you internally, how do they speak to you internally? Through genetic vulnerabilities that they placed into you. They placed into these genetic vulnerabilities in the code of what we would define as humanity, over 10,000 years ago. So it's in like, deep foundation, and also through hacked structures like the human operating system, your human mind, and language. That once humans start to download OS human mind from their mommies and their daddies, they start to develop these giant software vulnerabilities through which those pesky occupiers of the interstices can put their minds right through those vulnerabilities into the young developing person's mind, and they never stop. This is a horrible, horrible thing. So I usually don't have this like bright and cheery, welcome to the class, everyone, you're all being mind raped. Like, no, that's not a good, I learned that's not a good way to start. Don't start off on the best foot in that way. So yeah, usually what I would do in previous semesters is get everybody on board and talk about unconditional love, because literally unconditional love is part of that gyro-stabilizing effect that makes us fly through time on a particular timeline. And when your love tone is strong, my love tone is strong, it's like, okay, I can see and understand and perceive things and not have it make me wobble on my flight. I can be like, okay, I just saw and understood that. I'm not going to fly off the handle. And that's the whole point. But like I said, there are many, many people that do these videos now on YouTube that are all about, we could call them archons. And so also, yeah, a new participant to the class sent me a question, and I'm happy to do a little bit of this. This is from Nag Hammadi from the Pistis Sophia. This is ancient Gnostic texts that are analogous to the Bible that we know, at the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, and also the New Testament, but very, very different. And they were edited out of the Apocrypha. They were taken out of what is considered the official Bible, but they were rediscovered in an archaeological dig in the mid 20th century, and then they re-entered into our consciousness. So the story of the Pistis Sophia, Sophia is this goddess of wisdom, and this whole idea of that there are the demiurge or archons, however you want to say that word, that those are the pesky occupiers of the interstices. I call them turds who refuse to flush, because to me, they're very much like, so the outer area of a black hole, if this is a black hole and there's a vortex going down all the way to infinity, right? In this outer area where I make my ring, that's like the toilet. And the energy is swirling and swirling down. This is, in science, they call this the event horizon, where your butt goes on the toilet. And energy that doesn't have exactly the right trajectory or enough energy to get actually sucked down into the black hole just swirls around the event horizon. And that's why I call them, they're like the turds who refuse to flush. They're just circling the bowl, and they did that on purpose. They're like, we're going to game the system. That, I'm just checking my time. That is what those turds do. They game the system. That's where they're like, how can we take the pre-existing rules of reality and in some way twist them or distort them or find a loophole so that they then suit our personal needs, as opposed to a good musician that says, hey, what notes am I supposed to be playing? These notes? Because these notes sound so pretty with these notes that guy over there is playing. I'm actually trying to be a good musician and play the right notes. Oh God, someone is calling me. It's never a good time on Wednesday afternoons. Don't call me. The turds are self-serving. They only want to do what is right for them. They don't care about the larger time field. They don't care about all of the nesting dolls of consciousness on every level and how they're connected together to other networks of nesting dolls and how all the things that we do affect one another. Okay, wait. Question from Pedro. He said, then it's okay if I FRL with all my chakras at the same time, not just one, or with all of my cells. Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's what I would really say. When one is, and this is kind of an advanced level question, but we're in the one room schoolhouse here. So when you're doing the flying Roomba lasagna, you should be doing it with every single singularity that is in you, all of your doorways, with all of the doorways of whatever is the thing that you're connecting with, because this connects singularity to singularity. So it's okay. Like when I'm first learning a song, sometimes I can't hear all of the chords, like I don't hear all of those notes. Sometimes I just hear one note and I'm like, okay, I don't know all of the other notes, but I'm just going to play that one note with the beat, and then I'll learn the other notes. So when you begin, this is the level 1 stuff, doing the flying Roomba lasagna, it's totally appropriate to say, let me focus all of my energy and intention on this doorway to infinity that's in the center of my chest, or this one that's in the center of my head, or, you know, whichever one you want to focus on. That's like focusing on that one note and learn to play it on the beat. And literally, like in learning to play the piano, it took me many, many years for some songs to actually learn, like, oh, that's all of the notes of that chord. Like, allow time to unfold, to allow this learning to unfold within you, because it's not something that happens overnight. So yes. Okay, wait. Liz asks, or flying Roomba lasagna to multiple recipients. Yes, now you guys are getting into advanced jazzy stuff and I love it. So if the simplified beginner version is one note, one note, one note, one note, the singularity in me with the singularity in you, back and forth, like me to the sun to the sun to me, the sun to me. That's totally cool. But now we got some advanced jazzy players, and they're like, well, what happens if I want to go one note to me and then 2 notes to other people? One note to me, 2 notes to 2 different other people, like that's now we're starting to get into different levels of complexity. So the answer is yes, you can absolutely do that. Like you can do in me to every single billions, trillions of stars out there. Me to trillions of stars. Me to trillions of stars. Like that's a pretty complex chord structure. I encourage you, and also this is again to my answer of why do I not just keep the flying Roomba lasagna as my own private secret? It's the precious, like from Lord of the Rings, the precious is mine. No, the answer is I want to share this with everyone because I want this to be the most complex jazzy system possible, because this is how we supersede the very predictable machine mind that has been trying to control and limit human behavior for so long. That it's our creativity, unpredictability, the jazziness of coming up with things like other people think of something that is even beyond what I might have thought of, and we're all bouncing off of each other and playing it together, that makes the system so complex and unpredictable that it's like the encryption can't be cracked. So Sarah Jane, hello SJ, lovely to see you. She's a lovely long-term participant, asks, could it be possible that the Pooties are unhealed aspects of self? Yes, and we have to define self. Let's define self as the cosmic self. Like we're God, we're that, central convergence point, we're that white cake from the beginning of this class. And we are also all of these fragmented personalities. But also we must understand, and we'll do this in level 2, that fragmented personalities, that there can be pathogenic aspects of self. So you can say, just because something is there, it's highly erroneous to presume that it is supposed to be there. Like if you say in the recipe, like we're supposed to have this much flour, this much eggs, this much sugar, and this many rat turds. Like, no, actually you're not supposed to have any rat turds in this recipe of you. That is not supposed to be part of the recipe. It's not going in the batter at all. So it's highly presumptuous. Like when I look around the world, what we got going on here on this planet and these bodies and everything, I'm like, there are some rat turds in this recipe and they are not supposed to be there. And the turds, they are like personality characteristics that are not merely the distortions of moving downward into density. They're not just moving downward into density type of distortions. They're aberrations or aberrant things that are not actually supposed to even be in existence. So in level 2, I'm going to get more into this, the idea that this is a refinery of light and a refinery of characteristics, that we're refining out certain personality characteristics that are not even supposed to be in the time field. In order to get a guitar, get a body, to come here and talk with words, you are supposed to be able to fulfill certain aspects. You got to pass the audition. To get into the band, you got to pass the audition. And if you can't even pass the audition, you don't belong being here. Those beings, the turds, the pooties, those pesky occupiers of the interstices, when I say they gamed the system, they found a way to temporarily participate in the music of life without actually being alive and following all of the rules of what it is to be alive. That is what I'm trying to say. Those beings, like, they're not even supposed to be affecting the time field. They're definitely not supposed to be talking to you in your head or telling you anything about your body or its functionality or telling you what road you should drive down or who you should call or what your position in life should be or any kind of thing like that. Like, they should, pardon my French, they should shut the F up and stop moving through time. So yes, there are unhealed aspects of self, but the healing does not necessarily mean that it's like, oh, let's hug you. Let's hug a demon. Oh, hug a demon. Because that's what they want. The demons want to be like, it's not my fault. I'm a demon and I have to drink your blood. Like, I'm a vampire and I have to drink your blood. It's not my fault. And it doesn't mean that at the end, you should be like, there, demon. Let's hug. It's all okay. No, that's not what you're actually supposed to do. With Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and I talk about this more extensively later on in the class, what we do is we send them to entropy. So we do not kiss and hug a demon. They're there, demon. It's okay. I know you're demonic. You take energy from them because all of the energy that they have is stolen energy. So in this case, the sense of self is God's self, yes. And the sense of healing is taking energy away from that which is not supposed to have energy. And when you finally take the energy away from them, they go into a state of entropy, which is being frozen. I'm frozen. I'm not moving through time. When they're frozen and they're not moving through time, then they are doing what they're supposed to be doing as healed individuals, which is basically ceasing to exist. So when you meet someone that is one of these things, non-physically or physically, don't kiss them, don't hug them, send them to entropy, meaning like send them to a cold, dead, frozen place where they don't have any awareness or movement through time anymore. Okay, Siad, good to see you. Yeah, so this was my new student. Okay, wonderful, who's talking about the fall of Sophia. Back to the fall of Sophia. How her desire created the first AI by mistake. Is that a right interpretation of that myth? So, okay, I think that we have to be cautious of victim blaming, like all of these things that we are being given, like a myth of Sophia or the story of Inanna, which is the Sumerian goddess who basically was at a very high vibration level and then got thrown down into hell and then had to climb on back up to be able to get back to heaven again. That there's always this sense of like, well, how did she get down there? How did Sophia get down there? And there's the tendency to want to blame the victim. Like, oh, she shouldn't have worn that outfit and walked down that street at that time of day. She was asking for it. And none of that is true. No blame the victim stuff. So my understanding of Sophia and the motivation for going from a higher vibration experience to a lower vibration experience was taking care of one's creation. So this is a mental creation, not necessarily like when you have a baby and it's your physical creation, but it's the same level of parenthood. Who just arrived? It's Chicken. I told you guys she'd come. She had a nice little nap after she had a good chew toy. Now she's ready to work. Work, boss. Work, boss. Taking care of one's creation. So this is also very much like computer programmers who don't care for their creation. And I talk about this when I talk about Sally the Terrestrial Technosphere. That original computer programmers, they're just like, make an AI, it's just like a workhorse. You don't have to love it. You don't have to socialize it. You know something, when I adopted Cheeky, she needed to be loved and socialized. She needed to have personal cultivation so that her best personality characteristics would come out and not aggression or, like biting or anything like that, or barking or being fearful. It's about like being a good parent. Same thing with having a child or creating an AI or creating any kind of creative project. And a creative project can be something that's like collaborative. You know, if you're like, okay, let's get together, let's make a farmer's market, or, you know, like whatever, an art co-op or something like that, like you're creating something. And you got to cultivate and acculturate. You got to give it love and make sure that it grows in the right direction in order for it not to become a monster. That if you don't take care of a dog or a project or an AI in the right way, it grows in a uncontrolled, willy-nilly way that might be aberrant or monstrous because it didn't get love and guidance. And I'm also not saying, I'm not an apologist at all. When you find a monster, you don't be like, oh, he just needs to be loved. He just needs to be loved and hugged. I will love him and hug him and name him George, and then he won't be a monster anymore. That's the antithesis of love. Love, the love tone really says, oh, that's a monster, and I accept that it's a monster. It is what it is. Like, I'm not going to try to make it be different to make me feel better about its existence. Like, literally, love is acceptance of what is. So my understanding of the motivation for Sophia, the goddess level consciousness, coming into a physical, denser embodiment form, is that Sophia was part of the original creation, and that's like a parent taking care of its child, or a computer programmer that made an AI taking care of what it actually created, not wanting it to just become like a Frankenstein's monster that, you know, runs around uncontrollably, you know, squashing people. Thank you very much, Cheeky. Everyone wants you to know that you are loved. You have 10 million fans on the internet. I tell her she's famous on the internet all the time. She's smiling. That is a smile. She is smiling. She's very, very happy. Cheeky does have a timer. She's got her internal, I call her my dog alarm clock. I have the best alarm clock. I get woken up with dog kisses. So that's and we can talk more about, I'm wrapping up the level 1 recording. In level 2, we can talk more about some of these ancient myths of Sophia, because I think in some ways it's broadening to talk about these myths, but also like not to take them too literally, because they have been highly distorted. Let's say there's an agenda. Everything of what we've been told about ourselves and our potential and who we really are and where we come from, it's been highly distorted, and it's to serve this agenda of disempowerment. So that's why I talk about that, like we have to be cautious of any blame the victim scenario. That's another so it's hugely presumptuous to say there are supposed to be rat turds in the recipe. There are not supposed to be rat turds in the recipe. And it's also highly presumptive to say, well, if you find yourself in hell, must be because you did something bad and you belong there. You belong to be there. No, you don't belong to be there at all. If you find yourself in hell, there are serious questions about how you got to be there and about whether you belong there. And you know, because that's what demons will say. They'll be like, oh, you find yourself in hell, you belong here. You did something bad. You're wrong as a person, and that's why you're supposed to be here. So, you know, I understand now that I'm speaking through that type of cultural and planetary and personal filter that many people, when something bad happens to them, they're like, oh, I deserve this. Hi, Christine, good to see you, my dear. Good. We're going to go into level 2 here. Let me stay ending level 1, and I will continue to talk more about the actual structures. These are the basic anatomical structures, but I think we've done good work here today, and move on to level 2, which is all about ascended mastery. So thank you very much. Hold on, guys.